morning, everyone. Welcome to our Manufacturing and the Post-Lockdown Economy Forum, which is on liquidity and finance. My name is Christie. I'm the Chief Executive at the Sussex Chamber. So at the moment, businesses are facing cash crisis. We've got winter ahead, and businesses will face the most difficult trading conditions in post-war history. The British Chamber network continues to lobby government to ensure that there's comprehensive support. We've been providing lots of lobbying and representing businesses in the last few months to make sure that businesses can access whether it's grants, loans, and other business support. Today we have several business experts who will provide an overview of how their programs can support you and your business. Firstly, though, I'd like to introduce you to David Shaw, who's the Managing Director at Time24 and also the Chair of our Manufacturing and Engineering Steering Group. So welcome, David.
Yeah. Hello, good morning, everybody. And thanks for turning out above all, because these are very, very strange times. I know most people are working at the coalface to trying to sort things out. So it's good of you to take the time. I hope it's worthwhile. Normally I chat for 2 to 3 minutes just to talk about the stats in manufacturing, what is happening. If you look at the moment, if you look at April was down 28.4% in manufacturing from the previous year. May 23.1, June 14.6, July 9.4% down on the previous year. So you can see it's getting better, but it has been pretty awful. The manufacturers organisation Make UK has said that 2/5 of all manufacturers have made redundancies, and that 1/3 of manufacturers have said that they will make redundancies in the next 6 months. 77% of all manufacturers have furloughed between 1 to 50% of their staff, and it's the 7th month in a row that the job losses have happened in manufacturing. Even KPMG said they don't think full recovery will occur until 2023. So that's, I think, one of the biggest issues where we are is furloughing is coming to the end of October, and think tanks are saying that another 2 million viable jobs are at risk if that's not sorted out. If we look to what other countries are doing, Germany has extended its furloughing for 2 years to the end of 21. France has targeted certain industries for a further 2 years. Australia is extending till March. Italy is extending till December. As it stands at the moment, there is no plans yet, and we will see, as to extended furlough. And I know particularly organisations like Make UK that represent manufacturers are particularly worried about skills. So if you take Rolls-Royce Aerospace, who literally have got no business at all because nobody is flying, if not careful, you can completely lose that skill base that has amassed over years. So they're asking for a targeted industry furlough in manufacturing to help it extend so that there isn't this massive carnage of 2 million jobs that may go as a result of furloughing ending. The automotive manufacturers have lost 8.2 billion by the end of May, they lost. And they're saying that if there is a no-deal Brexit in the automotive industry, it will cost them 100 billion. So in manufacturing, it's a worry. I think we do need to understand what's happened post-furlough. If nothing, we all need to get our minds around that. But the government is being, in my view, and I'm sure some of the guys talking today are going to cover that, the government is being really supportive in terms of providing grants. So the Manufacturing Made Smarter initiative is putting £300 million into helping organisations. And I know Gareth will talk later, things that we're looking at, like the Hothouse funding coming through Coast Capital, can fund 40% up to some machinery acquisition. So if you go out there, there's a lot of more grant availability than I've seen for a long, long time as the government tries to help manufacturers out of where they are now. I think that covers up my usual manufacturing summary, which doesn't read great, but hopefully today we might get some pointers as how we can guide our business. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, David. As you say, yes, the next couple of months will be the most challenging as the furlough scheme comes to an end. The loans are also coming to an end. So, yeah, this will be really the crunch time. going into winter. I'd like to introduce our first speaker for today, which is Daren Booth from the Manufacturing Growth Programme. So Daren's the Economic Growth Solutions person at the Manufacturing Growth Programme. So they are the UK's largest and leading business support programme aimed at marketing and manufacturing for SMEs. So I'll hand over to Daren.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Thanks to Anna and Debbie for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you all. I guess the main purpose of the presentation is just really to give you an overview of the programme that I work on, which is the Manufacturing Growth Programme. It is what I would describe as a pre-COVID scheme. So it's been around now since 2017. It is one of the wider programmes that's part of the EU funding regime. So a lot of the language in here is around certain local enterprise partnerships. So it is only available in certain locations, which I'll come on to. I guess I just wanted to pick up maybe initially on some of what you said, David, in terms of what I'm seeing actually in Kent and East Sussex, which is a little bit more encouraging in as much that local manufacturers, I think actually are being quite resilient and at finding some quite good innovative ways to repurpose their products. And actually, in the main, from sort of local surveys that we're doing, a majority of certainly of the manufacturers that I'm working with are seeing very green shoots in terms of back to sort of pre-COVID levels. So yeah, so I think it's important that that message is kind of understood a little bit. That perhaps it's not as sort of bleak as perhaps being painted in the media, really. So I work on the Manufacturing Growth Programme. I cover Kent, Medway and East Sussex. The programme, as I said, is a pre-COVID scheme. And it's not a national programme. So what I wanted to do was just give you an idea of the sort of coverage of the programme across the UK. So the areas on the map in red are areas that are covered by the scheme, by the programme. So if you're in red, you stand a good chance of our support. Now, the way that historically central government has funded business support has been a little bit more sort of regionalised through what are called local enterprise partnerships. Forgive me if some of this terminology is well known to you, but I think it's just important to understand some of the sort of territories and boundaries. So for Sussex as a county, you're actually split into two. So we have West Sussex and East Sussex. To the southeast LEP, which has the funding, is Kent, Medway, Essex and East Sussex. But West Sussex falls into the Coast to Capital LEP and is not eligible for this programme. So again, I just wanted to make that point. So if an SME is paying its business rates to one of these 5 areas in East Sussex, so noted on the screen, Lewis, Rother, Wealdon, Eastbourne and Hastings, you happen to be located in a qualifying area. If you are in West Sussex, sort of they describe it as Greater Brighton, you to the Coast to Capital LEP, and I think if I've understood correctly, there is someone that's due to give us an idea of a particular programme in Coast to Capital. So again, hopefully some useful information. The Coast to Capital LEP Growth Hub website I have is on the screen now for businesses and support mechanisms covering Coast to Capital. What I wanted to do really is just put a little bit of context behind the MGP manufacturing program. It is not just a one-dimensional grant opportunity. Now, an important element of the program is the grant opportunity, but what missed is the level of support that myself, as one of the field-based advisors, I say field-based, working from my living room, but when we're back to actually out meeting with clients, you know, I am a field-based support mechanism for local manufacturers. So I think it's important to understand the kind of the layers of support that we provide to manufacturers locally. What we do is we try and spend time understanding what are the opportunities for growth within manufacturing SMEs. What are some of the barriers that they may be facing? And in a COVID world, lots of barriers, lots of concerns and issues. So what we do is we try and distill those fears, understand perhaps what are those opportunities for perhaps either growth or a recovery phase. And we do that by means of a well-regarded business support tool called Growth Mapper. Growth Mapper gives an opportunity for the senior team to quickly understand strengths and weaknesses within the business from both an individual viewpoint and also as a collective senior team. So it's quite a powerful diagnostic tool process to really tease out what's working well, what's not working so well, and perhaps giving a senior team an opportunity for a facilitated through myself, you know, independent view of those strengths and weaknesses. What I then do is spend quite a bit of time developing a priority plan for the manufacturing SME, and distilling those into priorities. And then identifying or helping an SME identify a suitable expert to work with to help them implement those plans. So the whole purpose of the MGP is finding the right coach consultant to work with the business around those opportunities and or barriers, or a mix of both. And I'll come on to some of the sort of projects that we look at in a moment. What we'll then do is we'll help them pay for it by means of access to a contributory grant. So this grant program, it has an intervention rate. We would call it an intervention rate of a third, so 33%. The sort of size projects that we look at are relatively small. They're projects around the sort of 3K to, we would say 5K, where they grant contribution anywhere between £1,000 and sort of £1,700. That's how it slices. So it's a little bit of a contribution to help them with either something that they were planning on doing, or something that perhaps sets them on a better path out of the current trading climate, as well as access to grants for what we would describe as third-party consultancy projects. We do have a small allocation of funding for capital projects. So we start to get a little bit of a crossover with perhaps some other support programs. But hey, if there's money there for manufacturing SMEs, then let's understand what's out there. Let's help it get spent. So again, grant contribution, grant intervention rate is at 33%. And the sort of capital project sizes that we're looking at, again, are sort of between the 3K and 15K, along those sort of cost range. Grant of a third. So, so not grants of 3, it's grants of 33% of project cost. A big part of what I do when I work with manufacturers is understanding perhaps some of those wider objectives and helping connect them to additional specialists, additional programs. For example, a lot of my manufacturing businesses have a distribution and logistics arm to what they do, of which I work quite closely with one of the network programs, TAIL, Transport and Logistics Efficiencies, and we work together to try and bring the right people to the forefront of what the business is looking to achieve. So, see the program really as much more than a one-dimensional access to grant support. We were providing some manufacturing productivity workshops on a face-to-face basis, but as you can appreciate, they're currently suspended. But they will kick off again at some point, either virtually or on a face-to-face basis. Some of this terminology, again, some people in the room now may be familiar with. This is an ERDF, so an EU-funded program. So there's some eligibility around client size. So those businesses that have less than 250 full-time equivalent staff, so it's not headcount, it's FTE, and have those maximum limits in terms of turnover and or balance sheet. It's rare that I come across a business locally that breaks these limits. And clues in the program title. So we can only support manufacturing businesses. What I wanted to do is, again, give a little bit more of a context around what does a manufacturer look like. I'm sure we've got a generic view of such a business, but I just want to widen that slightly, which will come up on some slides to follow. But a manufacturer, what we do is we try and use this really wide definition. So I will read it. So a business that engages in any economic activity that's directly related to a product or production process that they have researched, designed, or produced, or otherwise hold core intellectual property in. So a really wide definition. And again, I'll put some context behind that in a sec. The last part on the slide there might seem a little bit out of context with perhaps the current trading climate. Because this is a pre-COVID scheme, we were always looking to support those businesses with a growth intent. Although that kind of terminology language now is a little bit more attuned to supporting those businesses that perhaps are in a recovery phase. So when it talks about increased turnover, job creation, that's a wish list in the current trading circumstances. So a little bit about eligibility. So sometimes it might just need a little bit of our understanding of what we mean here. So this is a SME that actually physically makes something. So I think we can probably identify with that. So this could be something that they make for themselves, that they sell themselves, or that they make for a third party. So I think it's fairly straightforward. A manufacturer, somebody that makes something. We can also look at those businesses that perhaps assemble. or process something. So this might be componentry parts that are put together, welding, remanufacture, stripping something down and putting it back together, again either for their own sale, resale, or on behalf of a third party, so they're a contract manufacturer or assembler. The third one on here is quite an interesting one. We can also support, this is where the IP comes in, we can also support those businesses that are what we would call a product originator. So in this case, this might be SMEs that have designed, maybe some examples would be a medical device, a medical instrument, some type of electronic product. They have designed it, they own the IP of that product, but actually don't have the resources or the investment or capability to manufacture that product directly themselves in-house. So they choose to manufacture either elsewhere in the UK or overseas. We would still view those SMEs as being a manufacturer in this context. So, so I think it widens the net a little bit in terms of the types of businesses that we can work with and we can support. So very encouraging. We can also support food and drink producers. Now, some people might automatically say, well, of course you can because they're manufacturers, but not. I work with so many different people in networks, so many different coaches, consultants, and they haven't understood that food and drink producers, food and drink manufacturers are indeed manufacturers. There is a small caveat in as much that we can't support farms or growers, those businesses that are what are deemed to be primary producers. So it is an exclusion. So an example might be a vineyard, grows its grapes, and then manufactures its grapes into wine or juice. In that example, because they own the vineyards, they're classed as a farm, and therefore they're not eligible for this program. So again, just to flag that really. Again, just to sort of, I find this is quite useful. Again, just to get people thinking. So some example manufacturers, perhaps some ones on there that, well, of course they're manufacturers. Why are you showing this list? But there are some on there that I think, again, you wouldn't automatically realise are manufacturers. So I often sort of say we understand perhaps some of the engineering type businesses, perhaps some of the sort of dirty manufacturing, noisy, etc. But there's a lot of SMEs that also fall into this manufacturing category. So think people like coffee roasters, processing of tea. Those businesses that embroidery on clothing, for example, so on garments, sign makers, it's not on there, but that one tends to go together. So metal components, those businesses involved in joinery, furniture makers, kitchen equipment makers, cabinetry. Sawmills, processing of wood, printers. You get my point. I'm sure you've read down the list by now. Another one which comes up: processing of glass. This is cutting of glass, shaping of glass, changing the state of the glass, and toughening, lamination, painting of glass, etc. So there is an absolutely massive list of eligible activities and trades. What we do is we try and align to the Companies House SIC code, Standard Industrial Classification Code, of which there are several pages of manufacturing eligible SIC codes. Just again, to give you a little bit of an idea, context, perhaps some examples of the types of projects or the focus points that we look at specifically with our manufacturing SMEs. What we do is the growth mapper diagnostic tool that I mentioned splits off into these 10 themes and covers both standardized generic business themes, so things like strategy, marketing, leadership and management, etc. The last three on that list very specifically around manufacturing businesses, manufacturing competencies, skills, themes. So productivity and capacity, product and service innovation, and quality and continuous improvement. So what, again, as I said earlier on, what we're trying to do is understand where the business is operating at a higher level, and it might be that actually to stay on top of either the climate or their own growth opportunities, they continue to need to display strengths in this area. So it's not always about trying to find the areas that they're not so good at, but it's identifying what they're not so good at. And the growth mapper will help me to provide that kind of one-on-one support around all of those themes, but bring in the most important, bring in the most relevant external expert around some of those other points. So on the next slide, which I don't know if I'm sure you can just about read some of the examples. I wasn't sure how clear that would come out, that one. But just to give you some examples of the types of projects that we support or have supported. I appreciate that this is a list. It's not an exhaustive list, and the flexibility of our program does allow me individually to try really understand what the business is trying to achieve, and therefore there is a lot more in terms of support that I can help them unpick and fund. So again, just some examples. So strategy, so this might be about revisioning where they are now. What's the strategy of the business in the short term through a recovery? Do we need to revision what it is that we're doing? Do we need to think about our business model? Is it viable for the business to carry on in its present state, etc.? So lots of areas there in terms of interventions that I've supported, funded through strategy and revisioning of strategy, really understanding what are the opportunities moving forward. Quite a number of my businesses are now supplying direct to clients as opposed to third-party businesses, and actually the profitability is shifted upward. So again, some real good positive stories. Finance, again, sort of a commercial intent, understanding what the business needs to do in terms of either recovery, survival in the short term, medium term. That might also be about trying to help the business understand actually the wider sphere of funding opportunities, grant opportunities, and perhaps equipping those SMEs with skills to actually put together the right type of application. There's a lot of SMEs that are keen to access support, but actually the application process becomes a little bit too muddled for them. So again, it's bringing in the right expert to effectively hold their hand through applications for wider support, wider funding. Change is a topical point. Understanding actually the fears contained within the business owners and the wider staff team, and how do we start to mitigate and understand what we need moving forward. Leadership development, developing job descriptions. Again, a lot of businesses that I'm working with at the moment perhaps aren't going to bring back their entire staff roster, and actually through lockdown have identified that perhaps there are certain roles that are no longer fit for purpose in terms of how they're looking to move forward. So it's understanding, okay, are those individuals that are on furlough, can they be re-recruited, etc.? Can they be reskilled, or do they already have the skills to undertake the new roles that the business needs moving forward, etc.? People and skills. So again, skills development, often that migrates into developing people's sales skills, but there's a little bit more on there around planning and delegation, assertiveness skills, etc. And recruitment is in there, fits in with leadership as well. Productivity, worked with quite a few businesses of late to help them reconfigure workspace, social distancing, understand what they need to do to protect staff. A lot of this is implied by what we read in the press, and obviously from central government, but actually it's having that third party expert that's independent, that actually can get to the nub of the issue and help businesses navigate some of the sort of COVID safe working practices, and how that fits in very nicely with a lean manufacturing rationale in terms of productivity and efficiency. Sales and marketing, helping businesses develop new routes to market, developing or improving their e-commerce capabilities so they can sell direct to consumers rather than through third parties, etc. And then the three manufacturing issues, so quality, products and services. The other manufacturing one is productivity of the environmental is the environmental. So we can support supply chain accreditation, so those businesses that need to formally provide that sort of quality control and measures to enable them to effectively tender or grow their marketplace opportunities. I think that's me done. I don't know how questions, let me stop sharing. And then I think I can probably, if people shout questions, I may be able to answer.
Thank you very much, Daren. So I have got a couple of questions here that have been sent through to me. First one is, how can we support local manufacturing companies compete with the Northern Powerhouse?
That's quite a generic question. It's understanding, obviously, the opportunities of the individual business. So I think it's doing all of what I've said, is understanding actually a little bit more detail. What are the opportunities that particular business has? Who are its competitors? And does it need to potentially rethink its competitors? Often, it's not until you start to drill into. Sometimes there can be what I'll describe as red herrings. People who perceive their competitors actually maybe are not, because they're focusing too much on them rather than not focusing enough on themselves. What are they good at? What can they bring to the table in terms of perhaps efficiencies, and actually trying to understand where their marketplace is, and is it a more local market? Is it a national market? Is it an international market? So I think it's there isn't a specific answer to that, because I think we need to understand individual context and circumstances of the business that perceives it has an issue.
Okay, and the next one is about is the growth program looking at Industry 4.0, big data and net zero?
Does that come from Lorraine?
Yep. Sorry, Lorraine.
Again, I think we need to understand what do we actually mean by that. Most SMEs wouldn't immediately identify with what that looks like. So again, what are the opportunities and what are the issues, and let's find the right people to help them through those issues.
Okay. Oh, Lorraine, please go ahead.
No, that was fine. I'm not on the video camera for some reason this morning, but thank you, Daren, for answering the question. I suppose my observation is how we in Sussex, and I know Anna sits on the Business Support Partnership and the steering groups in the county, is that how can we really trumpet our assets that we've got in the south compared to our northern partners, and you know, whether it's around connectivity, whether it's around our skills, whether it's around enterprise and innovation, because I think the north has something like 35% fewer patents per head than we have down here. You know, we've got some real strengths in Sussex. So I suppose it's just how do we big that up? And a lot of the support I see picking up in your presentation is, as you say, the day-to-day general warts and all stuff that thwarts business day-to-day. But I suppose within our forum here and the connections we have with your support and the Hothouse and the ELEPs and so forth, how can we really motivate and support our manufacturing partners to, you know, big up what we do have here? Because that's, if we are going to be sort of almost competing internally in the UK somewhat with Brexit and so forth coming forward, how do we bring those things up? And I suppose that's why I asked things around Industry 4.0 and connectivity, the big data stuff, the net zero targets, that we're trying to support companies with these bigger challenges that are coming along, rather than, you know, some of the staff challenges that should be more day to day. So just, I suppose I was throwing that out there.
Yeah. I think in my experience, SMEs, we need to sort of pull it back a little bit to those day-to-day issues, because until they've sorted out those day-to-day issues, they can't look at the wider opportunities. And it's planning that pathway to, okay, is the end goal, but actually there's a journey that you need to go through. Otherwise, I mean, a high propensity of SME manufacturers struggle to even complete the most basic of paperwork for whatever reason. So in my experience, they need so much hand holding, and again, it's kind of planning that pathway to, okay, so if I hold your hand through this stage, what's out the end of that should be this, and continue to hold their hand. And what can happen is, because a lot of support programs are a little bit more tailored towards support at the outset, and then we sort of pass them through and we've moved on to the next one. There isn't that continuation. So as a network of support programs, I guess we need to find a way to work much more collaboratively, so that we understand the real specialisms that businesses can access and plan that appropriate pathway, so that we're not tripping each other up.
Okay.
Thank you. I know that we discussed this or raised this before, Daren, but I believe there were discussions with Coast to Capital in the past, but is there any plans at the moment of extending this to the Coast to Capital area?
But for whatever reason, they didn't want to endorse the programme when the opportunity was first offered to them, and that was repeated several times, but they didn't want to sign up to it. And I think I don't know the sort of localised reasons or politics behind that. I think it was more than anything else, it was because they didn't have the available funds for another program to support. But again, this was all pre-COVID, and I think this was discussions from 2018, so it's some time ago. Because obviously the UK's now left the EU, etc. Whilst we were successful in getting an extension to our programme until the end of 22, so there's some longevity here. I think I would be astounded if any other region, and therefore coastal capital, came on board at this late date.
Okay, thank you very much.
Unfortunately, but because I don't work in the LEP region at Coastal Capital, I'm sure there are plenty of other support mechanisms that manufacturers can access, but it's not just a specific one for manufacturers.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for the update on the manufacturing growth programme. Before we move over to our next speaker, there is some other funding as well in the East Sussex area, which is the East Sussex Invest 7, which is an East Sussex County Council and Regional Growth Fund programme to support local economy and create jobs. And it's delivered by the County Council in partnership with Locate East Sussex. So it's from grants and loans. So please do that so that you can access more information. And there's Locase funding as well in East Sussex. So there are more other programs that businesses can access. I'd now like to introduce Gareth Sear, who is the Business Hothouse Programme Manager at the University of Chichester. So Gareth has been helping entrepreneurs start and grow their businesses for the last 15 years. So the Business Hothouse programme is there to provide support for pre-start and established businesses in the coastal capital, or should I say West Sussex area. So I'd now like to welcome Gareth.
Hi everybody, and thank you very much for that, Anna. And great to hear about what you guys are doing, Daren, through the manufacturing businesses. So thanks for having me along to speak to you. So as Anna said, I'm Gareth Sear. I work for the University of Chichester, and we've been over the last 5 years developing the Business Hothouse. The Business Hothouse is a European Regional Development Fund funded programme of business support for all businesses across the coastal capital region, and I'm going to go through all different strands of support that are available to pretty much all businesses across the region, as long as you still fit that SME definition that Daren mentioned earlier. So the Business Hothouse can provide support to help businesses increase their productivity and growth, to access finance, to monetize innovation, for leadership and management development. It can support startups. I appreciate that's probably not for this forum. And also we've got a grant fund to help businesses, again, achieve any of those things on there: productivity and growth development, innovation development, LMN development. It's delivered by quite a big consortium of partners, and each of those different partners has a different set of specialist skills that they can bring to the programme. So the University of Chichester, I think as Anna said, I've been working with startups for a very long time now, so we're delivering a big chunk of the startup programme and the leadership and management programme. Sussex Innovation Centre, I'm sure you've all come across them. They're working very much across the innovation growth strands. YTKO and WSX Enterprise, they run the Dorset Growth Hub, so the equivalent to the Coastal Capital Growth Hub, and they specialise in a lot of raising finance for businesses. So they're delivering our access to finance strand. Brighton and Hove City Council are managing, delivering and cash flowing the business grants programme. Again, Prince's Trust, I'm sure you've all heard of them. They're delivering startup and growth support to young entrepreneurs, so those under 30. And EDIL, the Eastbourne District Enterprise Agency, they're delivering startup support and leadership and management support in the Lewis district. So they're our delivery partners, all based around either their geographical location or their expert knowledge. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk through each of those strands in a little bit more detail, so you know how your business may be able to take advantage of what is available through them. So productivity and growth. A lot of the UK lags behind the rest of Europe on our productivity statistics. We've all seen the headlines in the press, obviously pre-COVID, around how France has a much greater productivity rate compared to the UK, yet seem to work less hours. So there are some challenges there for businesses around productivity. Sussex Innovation Centre, they've been working with businesses to help them achieve their productivity and develop their growth for around about 21 years now. So across most of these strands, the original plan pre-COVID was to deliver workshops, one-to-one advice and consultancy. Sussex Innovation Centre have adapted their model now to provide packages of consultancy for businesses. So very much a bespoke service. So if you're looking at developing your productivity, developing your growth, and we appreciate, again, as Daren was saying, that this was all developed pre-COVID-19. So it might not necessarily be looking at growth, but it might be looking more at ensuring that your business is still surviving into the future. So they have a range of different packages of support, which might be around working with entrepreneurs with aspirations for growth, so working out what they need to do to achieve that growth. And then that can further follow up with helping them to develop the correct business models for their growth, whether that could be through licensing their IP, whether that could be through investing more in more efficient processes, or helping them to work out what the best markets are and how to research their markets. And without sales and marketing, you can't really get growth in your business. So it's making sure that the entrepreneurs understand brands, stories, sales processes, and how to make sales. So they've worked with around about 10 or 15 businesses now in the area on their growth products. And like I say, it's very much around about now getting a fixed set of consultancy, and the ERDF program can fund up to 12 hours of that consultancy with the Sussex Innovation Centre. We'll have a slide that comes up later with all the contact details for the Business Hothouse, but by all means do get directly in touch with any of the business support delivery partners. So the contact down there is for the Sync website, so all their details are on there for that. Sync are also delivering our monetization of innovation strand. Again, the UK still has challenges around innovation, as shown in numerous statistical reports and information that comes out from people like OECD, the EU, and research centres in the UK. Now, this is about monetisation of innovation, so it depends on where you might be in that innovation cycle. So it's not about exploitation of new knowledge, it's not about creating new knowledge, it's not about working with knowledge centres such as universities. There are other organisations, other business support programmes that are run by people like Brighton University and Sussex University that can support that. But this is about taking that innovation and putting it into your business and making money from it, whether that is around innovative processes, innovative ways of doing stuff, or introducing new products to the marketplace or new products to the firm to make your business more innovative. Now, for example, I was chatting to an entrepreneur recently who, through the furlough scheme, had furloughed around about a third of his workforce, and because of that, he had a very, very close look at how his business looks going forward, and he's now looking at ways of innovating his processes. So sadly, won't necessarily be taking everybody back on at the end of furlough, but should still be running a business which will be turning over the same amount of money, making the same amount of, well, increasing their profit because they're reducing the number of employees they have because they're innovating their workflow processes. So it's some of those sort of things that you might be looking at but this strand of support through the Sussex Innovation Centre and their packages of support that they might be able to help you with. Access to finance. This, at the moment, has been very interesting over the last few months. As we all know, the government has been offering huge amounts of finance to businesses, or the vast majority of businesses, to get them through the last 6 months and the challenges they've had over the last 6 months. But it's, again, often reported that SME businesses find raising finance one of their biggest barriers to creating growth in their organisations. A lot of them only look towards their banks for finance and don't look at other ways of raising that finance. So the access to finance strand will help organisations find the most appropriate finance to achieve the growth and what they want to do with their business. But also make sure that your business is ready to access that finance. And with a lot of grant funds, that means that you need to kind of understand what your business is doing, where it's going, and how to get that all down into a business plan. A lot of businesses don't have business plans. We know that. We kind of know reasons why, but we all know that business plans can have a really positive impact on a business. So it'll be about helping you to produce business plans, understanding your finances for your business. Again, a lot of entrepreneurs hand that all over to their accountants or their finance people. When you're applying for funding, you need to be able to discuss your finances in your business. So it's a whole range, and they're doing workshops and one-to-one support, all being delivered online, whether that's through Zoom or Teams. So again, we've had some quite large numbers of people going through that, but with a focus on getting them to apply to the Business Hothouse grant fund. Startup support. So this is looking at people that might be pre-trading or in the early stages of trading. I won't talk too much about this one, but the Coast Capital region has low levels of startups, and which obviously then need to go on, create growth and contribute to the economy. So we've got a business bootcamp program that we run through the University of Chichester, which is then followed up with a peer-to-peer action learning work groups to support them over the next sort of 6 to 12 months, rather than just giving it a one-off workshop that says this is how you start a business. It's supporting them on that journey to try and get them started on their business. We're expecting, and we've seen quite an increase in the last couple of months of the people that are signing up to these workshops. And then we're expecting this towards the end of the year, as furlough ends, as more people are likely to be laid off, that we expect a lot more people to be coming through here as they are exploring their ideas around starting up a business. If anybody here is potentially making redundancies in the future, and any of them, any of your members of staff are expressing an interest in starting up their own business, do put them through to us, and we can see what support we can provide to them. Again, leadership and management development. Sometimes I wonder how the UK manages to compete on a global stage. I mean, clearly we have some fantastic businesses here, but again, a lot of the research shows that the UK doesn't invest to the same levels as countries like France and Germany in leadership and management development. There's a whole range of reasons for this, and we were going to hope to put on a series of conference-style events across the region where we'd invite a whole range of businesses to come along and find out about leadership and management development, how it can really help your business, how you can access it, and how to break down a lot of the myths and barriers behind investing in leadership and management development. However, COVID has put a little bit of a spanner in the works for conference events. So I thought we were going to get close to being able to put some on towards the end of this year, maybe early next year. But yesterday's changes in numbers of people that you can have at events has changed again. So we're going back to a drawing board to look at how we can deliver leadership and management development to businesses across the Coast Capital region. So that will be delivered by the University of Chichester and the business school lecturers who've done some incredible work across a whole range of businesses. So we're going to be working with them quite closely on working out the best way of delivering it. Quite possibly it could be around peer-to-peer learning and action learning sets. And then the area that seems to be generating the most interest at the moment, surprisingly, is the grant fund. The Business Hothouse has got a grant fund of £2.8 million. It's being delivered by a brand called Invest4, which is part of Brighton and the Hove City Council. So we've got £2.8 million to distribute. We've had about £1.4 million applied for already, although we haven't distributed or agreed to distribute that much money. There's obviously a varying quality on those applications. We've got about £500,000 already allocated out to businesses. The grant fund at the moment works on a match fund of 40% grant to a 60% contribution from the business. And again, ideally, it should be linked to growth, and that would have been growth at pre-COVID times. So obviously, we would carry out due diligence on all the applications that come in. And we will be looking at what your business was doing pre-COVID, and also ascertain a little bit of where you're at now, where you want to go with your business. But we understand that businesses might have dropped in their turnovers, profits, growth, and it is about surviving the next few years and then focusing back on your growth. So the grant funds can be for between £2,000 for a £5,000 project and £170,000 for a £450,000 project. The £170,000 is a de minimis limit. So these are EU state aid regulations. So it depends on what other grant funds, what other sort of state aid you might have received over the last 3 years to the maximum ceiling that you could apply for. The grants under Invest4 can be used for capital equipment or revenue projects. There's a whole range of things that they could be used for. So I know Coast Capital have a range of grants available and have had a range of grants available, but primarily they've been for capital-based projects. So great for the piece of machinery, not so great if you want funding towards the training of your staff on how to use that new piece of machinery. The Invest4 grant fund can be used for both of those types of expenditure. So we've had a whole range of different people requesting funds for different things. Lots of breweries and distilleries, surprisingly. It's amazing the amount of those that are around the area. But they're looking for new equipment for as they are growing. So they're looking for new equipment to fund their growth. We've had a range of manufacturers looking for new CNC type machines, and the fund can cover, towards 40% of the project costs, but covers a whole range of different aspects within that project. So just some ideas of what it could be used for. So like I say, revenue projects, capital projects, plant and machinery if you're investing in that, premises improvements, growth consultancies. So if you wanted to develop a growth plan or a growth strategy for your organization, it can fund consultants to come in with you and work on that. And that would include other types of consultancy as well, whether that's marketing consultancy, innovation consultancy, because it all ultimately links towards creating growth in your business. If you wanted to invest in leadership and management development, and we've had some people that have applied for grant funding towards the costs of their L&M development through other organisations. What it can't be used for is qualification bearing leadership and management development. So if it's an ILM course or a MBA course, it can't be used for that, but it can be used to work with some of the private deliverers of leadership and management development. It can be used for software development, and we've had a number of people that have written in with applications for software development, and again also for digital platforms and specialist IT equipment. We've had quite a number of more of micro businesses that have been looking to move their businesses much more online over the last 6 months. They've seen that it works, and they've been just sort of, I guess, testing the market with very basic equipment, and they're now looking at investing in putting in studios in their premises, getting in proper lighting, getting in decent quality camera equipment, and decent quality sort of video editing stuff as well, so they can create much more of their business online. What it can't be used for, as I said, qualifications, quite a lot of retail premises and retail use can't be used for, staff salaries, and a lot of the obvious ones such as refinancing your business, paying debt in your business, can't be used for buying in stock. It can't be used for normal business costs or statutory legislative requirements or recruitment costs. So there are a few things that the ERDF funding cannot fund, but it does cover a whole range of things that can help you support that growth in your business. So I just chat through a little bit about the process for getting a grant fund through Invest4. So we've got two levels of grants. We've got small grants up to £5,000 and large grants which go from £5,000 upwards. The small grants have a relatively simple application form and a relatively simple due diligence process. And then the bigger the grant, the more process we have to put into it, more due diligence we have to put into it as well. So for example, with a large grant, we start with an expression of interest where we'll have a look at what your application is. Can it be used for it? Is all the expenditure eligible under ERDF rules and regulations? You'll then be invited to full application where we'll then expect to see all your accounts, your business plans, your cash flow forecasts, sales forecasts, and more detail on your application form. It then goes through a due diligence process with the Invest4 grant fund manager, or if it's over £40,000, it will go to an external finance company to carry out due diligence on the application and on the business. It then goes to a grant fund panel, and if it passes that panel, sometimes that panel asks for additional information, a bit of clarity on different things as well. But once it goes through that panel, the contract will get sent out to the organisation that's applied for it, and then the grant fund will be paid at 40% of value on evidence of defrayal and potentially other requirements around outputs that are required. So the defrayal part is really important. So the business has to spend the money on the project, prove that they have spent the money, and then claim it back as your agreement from Brighton Hove City Council. We'll then continue to work with you to monitor the project outputs and the assets that you've bought. So if you've bought assets with the money, with the grant funding, they're carefully monitored that they're not suddenly disposed of and the business is closed down. So in your contracts, it explains very clearly what you have to do if you have got an asset that you need to dispose of that has been paid for through the grant programme. And there is an element of risk of repayment if the process hasn't been followed carefully. So grant funds through the ERDF can be quite complex, but access to finance partners can guide you through it all. I know there are a range of private consultants that can guide you through it all, and I know Neil at Invest4 could also help guide you through it all. So, you know, do have a look at that information that's available, and see how it might be able to support growth and development in your business. If you like what you've seen and you want to get in touch with us to find out more about it, the access points are through general inquiries, as you can see there, hothouse@chi.ac.uk, range of delivery partner contact details, and same as Daren had on his, if there's something you want support with in your business that we don't cover, then do get back in touch with the Coast Capital Growth Hub at c2cbusiness.org.uk. Obviously, we've got all our communities around the Business Hothouse, so we're on Twitter, we've got a Facebook group, we've got a LinkedIn page, and that's for signing up to our email newsletter, so you can find out more about the workshops, the consultancy, the grant funds, and what's happening in the programme to help you achieve that growth in your business. That's it from me. I hope you found that interesting. And again, I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much, Gareth.
I'll take my screen share.
Slides and the presentation. So I have got one question here about much of the process about the grant funding is you need a project first.
Yeah.
So you have to get all the information before you even apply for a grant. But is there support to align the business first before you even go down that process?
Yeah, quite potentially. You could work with, say, Sussex Innovation Centre, and through one of their programs of support around your growth, increasing productivity, developing your innovation, they might identify a project that has been needed that you could get funding for, then apply for funding through the Invest4 program for that. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you.
The vast majority of our applications have been businesses who have just got their project that fits with their business plan, and the grant fund can help them just bring that forward, or it can help them just to do something differently now whilst we're going through these changes in how we operate.
Okay, brilliant. Can't see any other questions unless somebody wants to ask Gareth a question, or you may have something at the end. I can't see any raised hands or anything. Are there any questions at all? Yes, Gareth.
I've just got one more comment actually.
Yeah.
Under our funding strand, although it is very much focused on the coastal capital region, if you fit outside of that region, but all of our outputs and everything that we achieve with this programme feed into the All England programme. So East Sussex businesses could potentially take advantage of it, but we're not technically allowed to market it outside the LEP area because it's a coastal capital LEP allocation. But equally, we can't turn down applications outside the area.
That's fantastic. That is really amazing. So that will help support a lot of businesses, but they will apply directly. Yeah. Yeah,
absolutely.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Gareth. We'll see if there are any more questions towards the end.
Okay.
Take too much of people's time. I just wanted to mention that the Chamber launched a Chamber Finance Finder back in June. So this was through the whole network, through the British Chambers, and it was in partnership with Swoop Finance. So Chamber Finance Finder is in partnership with Swoop, and it was launched by the British Chambers. And this was to help businesses really navigate around the current funding landscape, because there were lots of challenges in terms of lots of grants, lots of finance, lots of loans. So this platform really simplifies and speeds up the whole process for our members. So it provides access to different loans, equity, and funding that's available. For our members, this is a portal available for our members. There is a link here, so we will share that with you. Basically, you go directly onto a portal. What happens is you need to enter your company registration details, so it links you with Companies House. It then links in with your finance and accounting, so it will link in with your, say, Sage accounting, for example. It will also create some kind like a finance check for you, and health check. So there is 7 days a week hotline support, so that people can contact you, you can liaise with them, you can just make sure your finances are in check, what is it you need to do. So they provide all of that. They provide lots of templates as well to help you look at your financial processes to make sure that you are in a good place. It then takes you onto another page. So it built up your profile, built up your company profile. It then checks whether you're eligible for any funding, And there's lots of different multiple funding options. So as I said, it goes through a portal. It's really easy. You just have to answer a few simple questions. You build up your profile through Companies House, through your cloud accounting or online banking systems. It all links in. And then you get matched to any funding opportunities that help you access solutions such as loans, equity, or grants. And then you could submit applications. So it really is very, very simple and easy. They've also been accredited by the Financial Authority in the UK. So it links in with all of the banks, all the accredited banks, all of the financial lenders, all of the loans that are available in the UK. So it allows you to review all the options, review the interest rates, what you would have to pay back over what period of time. It tracks your progress as well online. So you can speak to financial experts to help manage your application right from the beginning, right through to the end. And then it allows you to review your application to see where you are in the process. So as I said, it's a complete financial health check. They provide lots of templates and tools to help your application as well, provide you with financial updates and alerts, such as there's a new grant that's available, and they've got a finance newsroom. So this is a little bit small to see, but hopefully when you receive all the slides, you'll see this. There's lots of, so in terms of loans, you could access different like merchant cash or working capital, business loans, invoice finance as well, and asset finance. In terms of grants, this could be R&D tax credits and Innovate UK funding. There's also the COVID finance options at the moment, such as the loan schemes and the Future Fund. And there's also the equity funding. So whether that's the high net worth, angel funding, venture capital funding, and crowdfunding as well. So I won't go through the Q&A, but that gives you a flavour of what this portal is able to do for your business, because it is quite challenging in terms of navigating all of the different financial options for businesses. So it allows you to look at everything, all of the financial options across the whole of the UK and what you're eligible for. But more importantly, it allows you to really do a health check on your finances and talk to experts. So this is provided as a free service for all of our chamber members. I won't go through all of the Q&A. There are various Q&A slides as well. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen there. And just wanted to open it up to see if anyone had any questions on the Chamber Finance Finder or on the Manufacturing Growth Service or on the Business Hothouse. Hi, Rob.
Just sort of from my experience and working with lots of different people, I think because of where we are at the moment, we've got this sort of catastrophic divide by the people that are surviving, and some people are actually doing well out of it, but also the established sort of manufacturers that are just struggling. The rug's been pulled out of them, and I kind of, the grant stuff I think is really good, and free money protects people and allows them to grow and maybe be innovative. Just the people that I work with, even if they're in a relatively strong position, taking on more debt to survive is quite a tough plan. And I'm lucky the people that I work with seem to be relatively unscathed, if not impacted. It's not necessarily being catastrophic, but I'm just wondering if we need to have more emphasis on selective grants, so we're not burdening companies with more debt just to survive. And I don't know what the general consensus is that our established manufacturers happy to take on more debt to be innovative, or actually for the next 12 months, that's just a step too far.
Maybe if I can ask our speakers to unmute themselves, as well as David, our chair of our forum, so that you can all feed into this, if there's any comments that you'd like to make on Rob's comment there. Sorry.
From the Business Hothouse's point of view, it is a grant program, so it doesn't need to be repaid. So yeah, it's whether or not they're using other debt to use to do the match funding part of it. And I know we've had a few people that have used their bounce back loans from the government to match fund the Business Hothouse grant fund. But as is absolutely as a grant, it's not to be paid back unless there's something that doesn't comply to ERDF regulations, which we do try to avoid at all costs.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
We have found that really interesting, because we needed a cable preparation machine, costs about 100k, would really make us more productive. But if suddenly we can get 40,000 of that 100k, it can sway the decision. It can say, hey, I will go ahead, won't. Go back to your point, Rob, I think there's a real issue. Masses of manufacturers have been using the government loan scheme to survive.
Yeah.
All these CBILS loans that have been put out in their thousands now. When we come out of this, there's going to be no money left for investment. These people are going to be so indebted. And I think the government recognises that is a real issue. And if you look at Germany, they have a state-sponsored bank, which instead of doing purely debt, they're starting to take equity in businesses so that they're not laden so much with some of that situation. We don't have an equivalent to that banking system here. But some of these people with the CBILS loans, they'll be paying their debt off for the rest of their working lives. And it won't give them anything to invest in the future. And I know the government's very aware of it, and the local MP here is very aware of it. It's what they can do about it. A lot of them are just using debt to get by. I think it's a very good point you're making.
Are there any other questions? I can't see any other raised hands. or anybody else asking any questions. I didn't know whether there was any final comments that any of the panel wanted to make, or David, from what you've seen from the presentations today, and just to really wrap up today's session.
I think there's a separate fund available from the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund, which is basically, if you want to try and digitize your business, there is specific funding available through that fund to digitize your business. So I think there's going to be so much thrown at it. Everybody just needs to be aware of what is around. Going back to your point, Gareth, a lot of this is grant funding, not to be repaid. Your point, Rob, it's the match funding part is a problem, isn't it? It's not just
potentially, and that's the stifling innovation. You've got people that were very keen, but actually they're astute business people, and productivity and innovation suddenly gets put on a back burner to survival and debt. And sort of with the management growth program, that to me is a nice little nudge. Things that are easy wins, and maybe the hothouse thing as well, is that if they're relatively easy to get access to, they're not so onerous that your business has to be perfect before you can get anything worthwhile for funding, if you sort of mean. So those little nudges, and working with people for 20 years, they're the ones that really help people, are those easy nudges to do something. Most companies want to do something, but actually they just need that helping hand, but without being overly burdened with the project to achieve it, and then the money that they've used to sort of develop further. So sounds like there's some pretty interesting stuff out there. It's just our business is strong enough at the moment to be creatively innovative, or actually they're just going to sit on their hands until this blows over or they die.
I can't find the raising hand bit, Anna.
Oh, sorry. Hi.
My has disappeared on my thing today, but so thank you, Gareth, for your presentation. Some of the interesting things we've had experience from the managing the ERDF schemes as well, and just notes of observation, is that they don't, it sounds obvious, but it doesn't include VAT. So sometimes we've had to go back to the company and explain that obviously it doesn't include the VAT because you would claim the VAT. So sometimes people don't realise that. And then they sort of get that reduction in the grant amount come through. They sort of wonder why that is. And people like Let's Do Business have offered their loan scheme to sort of short-term loans. So they recognise to cover the cash flow, because to cover that cash flow of 40%, you know, so it's a lot of these grants are, you know, there is sometimes a what would you do if you didn't get this grant, or you know, you sometimes put, oh, we probably wouldn't run the project, but then perversely you've got to fund it 100% first for, you know, probably the best part of a 1 to 2 months cash flow. So I know that Let's Do Business did offer, and were offering people that sort of short-term loan facility to cover the shortfall, because
that's great to know. Thanks, Lauren.
Useful today. And yeah, and just, I suppose we talked a little bit the other day, Gareth, didn't we, on LinkedIn, about the opportunity of using some of the consultants that are locally. We've got lots of good consultants locally in Sussex. A lot of them belong to the Chamber, to help with grant applications, because they are a bit of an art form sometimes. They're a bit like an exam paper, I think, sometimes. If you know how you read the question 3 times and it still doesn't go in. So, you know, it's worth speculating to accumulate sometimes, particularly on some of the bigger grants. And we've got lots of really good people locally to support with that, or whether it is the Chamber and so forth. And I suppose I'd echo Anna's comment with her grant finder there, as you know, there's grants coming out every day at the moment. I've never seen so many grants come out. There's grants coming out from Innovate UK, all the different funding pots, and the turnaround is really quick. You know, it seems to be, you know, within a matter of weeks sometimes, application deadlines. So do keep in touch with, you know, all these intermediaries that are on the call, because we sort of sometimes throw out information about these calls and there might only be like a week to turn it around, or a couple of days sometimes. But there's some really interesting funding calls, and not all of them are some of them are 100%. Some of them involve working with partners like universities and so forth, and which case they do, we generally will have somebody in the university to help write that application. If there's, that sounds a bit trite, but if there's something in for the university, that we can allocate that resource to co-partner writing some of these bids, particularly around the innovation stuff, I think Gareth said. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Lorraine. And that you just made one point there in terms of lots of grants coming through. I know not directly related, but the government has just launched a new Kickstart scheme, which is for businesses to help support young people aged 16 to 24 with a job placement for 6 months, paying them a minimum wage, 25 hours a week. And that salary, including national insurance and pension, will be fully funded by government. There will also be funding of $1,500 to help the setup costs and the training and development skills for that young person. And the Sussex Chamber is acting as an intermediary. So what that means is businesses that are applying for 30 placements or more can apply directly to the government. But if you only have 1 placement or 2 placements, or just a handful, we will gather all of those and submit them in batches of 30. So we're helping support businesses across the whole of Sussex. And this is a great way, going back to the comments that were made, a lot of people are going to be made unemployed. Young people are really going to struggle getting onto the career ladder because of COVID and how that's impacted young people. So this is a great opportunity for businesses to give something back, to help develop skills for those that are on universal credit. It's working in partnership with the Department for Work and Pensions and the local job centres. So I'll send further details as well as the slides and the recording in terms of us being an intermediary. But if you know of any businesses that wish to have a job placement for 6 months, the scheme is open until December 2021. So that's my final comment. I didn't know if you wanted to have any final comments as well, David, before we wrap this up.
No, I'm just glad that so many people came out. It's been a struggle to get people together, and I just hope this is a start of grouping it all together. And there's certainly some very, very interesting information. And because the landscape of grants is, as you say, is literally changing by the day, I think it's good that we meet regularly to communicate those grants.
Definitely. Thank you very much, everyone. I'd like to thank our speakers. Thank you very much for your time today.